Welcome to Back in Crime, a podcast presented by Texas Crime Travelers. I'm Stewart Fillmore, retired FBI agent.
And I'm Todd Hiles, retired Secret Service agent. In this podcast, we cover cases we worked and some we wish we had.
As lifelong street agents, we were where the rubber met the road.
While the big guys were doing press conferences, we were interviewing the criminals.
And because of that, we can take you inside these cases
and under the crime scene tape.
This is Back in Crime.
Stewart, in today's episode, we're going to travel back almost 100 years.
Really? Okay.
We're going back in crime to 1925.
1925. So a lot's going on then probably in the crime world.
The FBI is really just starting. The director is J. Edgar Hoover.
Well, J. Edgar Hoover became the director in 1924, and I think the Bureau had been formed in 1908. But yeah, this is the dawn of what's going to become the modern FBI.
And the director Hoover, he's creating this national agency of criminal investigators.
Yes, and he's professionalized it somewhat. Prior to Hoover, it was really kind of a boys' club kind of thing, and it was who you knew, and it was really just political appointments to get into what was then called the Bureau of Investigation of the Justice Department.
And he knows at that time, again, we've talked about this before. He's out with his thinking. He's out of the box thinking.
Yes, yeah.
And he's really starting to think about these transnational criminals that are crossing state lines.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, once they left the state of Texas, then they weren't being pursued anymore by law enforcement.
Exactly. Bank robberies, stolen cars, all those kind of things. To get away from trouble from the law, people just cross state lines.
Right. And I think we know in our childhood watching the Dukes of Hazzard, when the Dukes boys got out of Hazzard County, then the police couldn't chase them anymore. The car chase stops. At the county
I think that
line.
was just for TV, but it is true about state lines.
Right. Once you cross state line, you knew that they couldn't keep apprehending you.
And you know, criminals being criminals, they're certainly going to take advantage of that.
And again, at this time, there's not a lot of crimes that the FBI has jurisdiction yet.
Yeah, it's nobody really knows about it. It's on no one's radar. J. Edgar Hoover, I've said many times before, there's a lot of areas where you can criticize him. The one place that I have a big problem with him is that he held on to his job essentially through blackmail, but. You cannot deny he was an administrative genius, and he set up a system that allowed covering those a national agency and to efficiently document what their investigations were and to get to small pieces of information that are critical. Let's say in Oklahoma, and you need help in Nebraska. All that was coordinated very, very efficiently, and he was really good at that. A lot of people just said he was really just a genius librarian, and there's some truth to that.
Right.
But in addition to that, he was also super ambitious. He wanted to be, I guess maybe famous is the right word, or certainly acknowledged as being the top cop in the country.
And with that, he's having the U.S. Congress. He's getting them to pass laws constantly that keeps giving him more authority and arresting powers in his newly created FBI.
Exactly, and that's where that's where I have a problem with him. The stories are documented out there. If a certain congressman was not being cooperative about either a budget increase or passing a new law that would give the FBI more jurisdictional authority, that congressman might have a visit from a couple of FBI agents.
Right. Late one night.
Well, not necessarily. It would be probably during business hours and very professional. And the agents would say that Mr. Hoover has become aware of some information that you are having a homosexual relationship, and he doesn't believe this in any way. He feels this is slanderous information, but he wanted to make sure that you knew that this is out there, and he's going to do everything in his power to keep that from getting out into the public. So it was a veiled threat.
Right, exactly.
And then that congressman would, comply many times. And so that's kind of how he did business. So I have a real problem with that.
Right. And just kind of on a side note here, again, I want to remind our listeners that you are a retired FBI agent.
Yes.
And I'm a retired Secret Service agent.
Yes.
And again, we're talking about 1925. Your FBI is fairly new at this time.
Yeah.
But my agency, the Secret Service, has been around for about 60 years.
Yeah. At that point.
Right. And again, Stewart, I'm not keeping score, but it does make the Secret Service a little bit better than the FBI.
So being around longer makes you better.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
We have been around better, and we've been along longer, so therefore we're better.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to you.
You and I have talked before. As a kid, there was a TV show on, because I'm a little older than you, but when there was a TV show on called The Wild Wild West, and there was an actor in it named Robert Conrad. And Robert Conrad was a really good-looking dude. He was real charismatic, and he played this Secret Service agent named James West in this show. And James West and his partner had all these cool gadgets, and he had a Derringer that popped out of his sleeve of his coat when he needed it.
Right.
And it was just, he got out of so many problems and scrapes that he was in by having this really cool technology that they didn't have back in the Old West when this is said. But I loved that show. And so I've always, in the back of my mind, I've always really thought that, how cool the Secret Service is.
Because we've got those cool gadgets.
You got the gadgets.
Well, getting back to the 1920s and the 1930s, there's some new laws that are coming out, and one of them is the Lindbergh Law. Again, it gave the FBI jurisdiction jurisdiction in kidnapping cases.
And I tell you what, in the comments, folks, that if you're interested in the Lindbergh kidnapping case, I'd love to do a podcast on that, because that is a really fascinating story, and it is how the FBI ultimately gets jurisdiction in kidnappings. But man, there's a lot of problems with that case, and so if you're interested, let us know if that's one you want us to check out,
and we might be able to do that in the future. So again, the Lindbergh Law.
Yeah.
There's also the Dyer Act, which I think was passed in 1919. And that is, it's a federal crime if a stolen car crosses state lines.
Yeah.
And so...
that becomes really, in those days, that's the FBI's bread and butter.
Right. But in today's episode, we're going to discuss a crime that has many firsts for the FBI, in that this is one of the first major criminal investigations by the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the first national manhunt in the United States. Mm-hmm. For somebody, and sadly... And
utilizing some of those new procedures and techniques that Hoover has implemented that are brand new to law enforcement.
And sadly, this case involves the first FBI agent to be killed in the line of duty.
Yeah.
So let's go under the crime scene tape, and let's go back in crime.
Yeah, let's do it.
So there is a professional car thief named Martin Durkin. And he's fond of stealing big engine cars like a Cadillac or a Packard.
Okay.
About 4 times between February and October of 1925, he steals cars from California and he drives them to Chicago and resells them. His MO for stealing cars is that he walks into the dealership on an afternoon and he haggles over the price because he pretends to be a prospective buyer. And again, he haggles with the salesman. Eventually, he says, I'll take the car, write it up, I'll buy it, but I'm going to come in tomorrow morning, hand you the cash, but you better have the car gassed up and ready to go. And so sometimes he'd get the paperwork then to the car because they thought he'd be coming back in the morning.
Yeah.
Because, he wants the delivery of the car the very next morning. But that night, he would break into the dealership and he'd steal the car. He eventually would...
Knowing that they've got it gassed up and ready to go for first thing in the morning.
Right. Yeah. Eventually, he could change the serial numbers on it and get it re-registered in a fictitious name, and then he's able to sell it. So on the night of September 23rd, 1925, Martin Durkin breaks into a car dealership in Pasadena, California.
Yeah.
Because he'd been there that that afternoon. Sure. He knows the car's there.
His typical MO.
Right. He gets up on the roof of the building. He enters through a skylight. He breaks down a garage door, and he drives out of the showroom in this brand new Packard. And again, it's all gassed up, and it's ready for him to go.
Yeah.
At the time that he steals this, his girlfriend, her name is Elizabeth Andrews, and she's with him.
Yeah. Todd, we talked in an earlier podcast about how technology has changed and made it way harder to do certain crimes. Can you imagine how hard this would be for him to carry out this scheme today? With
right.
the tracking stuff that are on cars,
on the new cars,
burglar alarms in buildings, and
right, surveillance cameras that are up.
Yeah,
but even we've talked about this before. Even just the states requiring driver's license, because how many times do we talk about this before that Bonnie and Clyde get pulled over, but they just give fictitious names.
Sure.
And the police just
let them go. And if they even had a driver's license, it probably didn't have a picture on it.
Yeah, it would have a name and something that they could easily have counterfeited.
Mm-hmm.
So getting back to Martin and his girlfriend here. So they steal this car in Pasadena, California, and now they're going to start driving to Chicago. Along the way, they stop in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where they pick up a guy by the name of Harlow George and his wife.
Okay.
And finally...
Harlow, that's not a name you hear much anymore.
and finally, around August 7th or 8th, or October 7th or 8th, they finally arrive in Chicago. And they all go to the home of Clarence Ward. Mm-hmm. Clarence is the uncle of Betty Andrews.
Okay.
And so they park the stolen Packard kind of in the rear alley near Ward's house. Mm-hmm. They park it there. The next day, the uncle Clarence Ward and this Harlow George, they get into an argument. And the uncle kicks Ward and his wife out of the house.
Okay.
And so supposedly, as Ward is getting kicked out of the house, he yells back to the uncle and says, "Hey, listen, Martin stole that Packard.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell the police." And that's what he does. Later that day, George is going to go and tell the police.
Yeah.
But that same day, the uncle he warns Martin Durkin. Says, "Hey, listen, I had this argument. I've kicked George out of my house.
Yeah.
But he's telling me that the Packard is stolen.
Yeah.
But Martin Durkin denies that the car is stolen. He says it's a hot car because I really didn't pay for it. But I'm going to go back to California."
Boy, that's splitting hairs.
Exactly. He says, "Don't worry,
it's not stolen, but I didn't pay for it.
Yeah, okay. But I'm going to go back.
It's just on loan."
Right. I'm going back to California, and I'm going to pay the car off.
Okay.
So on Friday, October 9th, Harlow George, he goes to the FBI about the stolen car.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day...
And now, for 1925, a Packard would have been a luxury car of the day. I mean,
and a big engine.
A big engine, probably like a 12-cylinder engine or something. A luxury car, an expensive car.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, that Friday, George tells the FBI that there's a stolen car here.
Yeah.
On Saturday, the FBI agents by the name of Shanahan and Rooney and two police officers, they actually meet with Harlow George. Mm-hmm. And George, again, tells them about the stolen car, and he says, "Hey, Durkin has a pistol in the car." Mm-hmm. George also tells him that on Sunday, the next day, Durkin is going to take the stolen car to Porter's Garage, which is located on Princeton Avenue in Chicago, because he's going to have some small repair done to the car.
Yep.
So Agent Shanahan at that time, he plans to arrest Durkin for the violation of the Dyer Act.
Yeah, when he shows up with the car.
Because the car has been stolen in California, it's crossed state line.
Yeah.
So on that Sunday, Agent Shanahan and the Chicago police officers, they set this, a stakeout or surveillance up in the garage, and they wait for the arrival of Durkin in the stolen Packard.
Sounds like a good plan to me. I'm
right
for the day and for the circumstances and the situation. That's exactly what I would have done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, we've both been on stakeouts. We've both been on surveillances, and a lot of time it's just sitting there waiting. And a lot of times you sit there and wait all day, and nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
And this is what happens. They wait all day.
Yep.
Durkin never shows up in the Packard. So around 5 p.m., the police officers.
I'm surprised that a garage would have actually been open for business on a Sunday, but maybe they worked something out to, meet after hours or come in special to open it or whatever.
Right, because the business is open that day.
Maybe it's like a gas station, like with a garage attached to it, maybe, or something.
It could be. I tried to Google to see if it was still there. And of course,
you know what I love to do when I go through these old files like this. They'll have the address of places, and I love to look at like what it looks like today. And a lot of times in cities like Chicago, it hasn't changed. It's still the same.
Right. So again, all day they've been sitting out there. Now it's around 5 o'clock on Sunday, and the police officers, they leave because their shift is over. But they say, hey, 2 more officers are going to come take our place. And then, so really, it's Agent Shanahan is kind of there by himself. And as luck would have it, that's when Durkin arrives.
Yeah.
And he parks inside the garage. The owner of the garage is there. The owner has an employee that's also there because they've been told by the police that we're waiting for this Packard to show up. So when Durkin pulls into the garage, the employee starts walking over there to Durkin, and the owner kind of stops the employee and says, don't go over there.
Yeah.
And about this time, the owner says, I see Agent Shanahan. He's the only law enforcement present at the time. He enters the garage, and he starts walking towards Durkin.
Yeah.
At this moment, Durkin has bent over the car with his back to the approaching agent. And Agent Shanahan has his .38 caliber revolver in his hand, and he reaches out with his other hand, and he touches Durkin.
Okay.
Durkin spins around, and again, according to the owner who's witnessing this, there's words exchanged between the agent and Durkin. But the owner does not hear what is said.
Okay.
The owner will later testify that he believes that he saw Agent Shanahan open his jacket up to show him a badge that was pinned either to his vest or to his belt.
Okay.
But
police procedure, for the day, that sounds probably typical. You wouldn't, that's not what you would do today.
Right.
But,
and again, maybe that's what Shanahan does. He's got the gun in his hand, and he's showing him his badge.
Right.
Hey, I'm an FBI agent. But at that moment, the owner hears 2 gunshots, and he watches the agent fall out of his view to the ground.
Okay.
The owner sees Durkin jump into the Packard, back out of the garage, and then several more gunshots are fired by the agent at the fleeing Packard.
So Shanahan's still alive then. He wasn't immediately dead.
Right. And on the floor of the garage, officers are going to recover 2 empty shells from a .32 caliber handgun.
Okay.
Agent Shanahan's gun will contain 4 discharged shells and 2 loaded shells in his revolver. Agent Shanahan, he's going to be shot once in the forearm and once in the chest. And sadly, he passes away within an hour of this. And again, he is the first FBI agent killed in the line of duty.
Yep.
Later that evening,
just to let you know that at the Quantico training, where the FBI training academy is, it's on the Marine base at Quantico, Virginia. There's something called the Hall of Honor, and it's pictures and the stories of all the agents that have been killed in the line of duty. And sadly, I don't know the exact number. There's quite a few, but Shanahan has always stuck out to me because he's the first one you see, in this wall of honor. And so I've known about this guy for a long time.
Yeah, you're right. Most law enforcement agencies have those wall.
Yeah, some kind
wall
of
honor.
some kind of dedication. Exactly.
Now later that evening, the Chicago Police Department, they'll recover the abandoned Packard, and it's in a private garage located on a residence on Inglewood Avenue. And just like you said, as soon as I got the address on Inglewood Avenue,
look it up.
I looked it up.
Yeah,
and the garage is still there.
Yeah, that's what it's so cool. That's one thing so cool about Google Street View is, at least for a history junkie like me, is to look up and see where these things happened. Because to me, there's just something really cool about getting an idea for where it happened and how everything there is in relation to to it. And like I said, I end up, a lot of the research I do is just looking for addresses like that in historical cases.
Because this garage where they recover the Packard is really a short distance away from where the actual shooting takes place. And again, later there's going to be some witnesses that they say that they picked Durkin up, and he no longer had the Packard with him. They kind of asked about the Packard, and he says, somebody else has it. That he no longer has it.
Right.
He's eventually driven to an apartment, and at that apartment, he's telling witnesses that Harlow George ratted him out, and that he needs a razor to shave his mustache.
To change his identity, make him less recognizable.
Right. Yeah. And that same night, again, the director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, he's going to say that we've got to get Durkin. If one man from the Bureau is killed and the killer is permitted to get away, our agents will never be safe. We can't let him get away with it.
I agree with that.
And so this, manhunt begins for Durkin. The city of Chicago posts a large reward, for his arrest.
Yeah, sure.
The federal government and some of these postings will say there's instructions to kill on sight if necessary.
Oh man, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, you take it, and the logic is that somebody that is going to kill a police officer or a federal agent wouldn't think twice about killing a civilian,
right? Because
presumably most people automatically assume a law enforcement officer is armed and therefore is a danger. You present somewhat of a danger to you as the criminal, but I'm still willing to go ahead and take on that threat and kill you. Then, like where most civilians are not armed, then so the thought being, it's not just because they got one of our own, it's because this is a person that has demonstrated that they are an absolute threat to the general public.
They are a danger to society.
Yes.
18 associates of Durkin are surveilled. Many are taken into police custody, and they're questioned to the whereabouts of Durkin. Approximately 20 telephones are tapped by the FBI, and they're listening day and night for any whisper that may lead to Durkin's whereabouts. And actually, before killing this FBI agent, Durkin already has a reputation as a gunman that would shoot police officers upon being confronted by the police. Because a year before the killing of Agent Shanahan, Durkin, on December 5th, 1924, he's caught by Chicago police officers breaking into a building. And Durkin has a shootout with these three police officers.
His immediate response is to shoot first.
Right.
Okay, that was kind of the same MO of Clyde Barrow. He didn't ask questions, he just started shooting.
So on this night, he actually shoots three Chicago police officers, and he escapes.
Yeah.
Now, the officers are going to recover from their injuries, but he's been on the run for over a year from the Chicago police from that incident.
Okay.
So he is a desperate gunman.
Yeah. Hey, Todd, let me ask you, in your research into this, is the bad guy, is he a Chicago guy, or is he an LA based guy? Where's he operate from?
I think he came from another country, but made it into the Chicago area.
Okay.
And so he's been around Chicago for a while.
So he just travels out to LA. That's kind of
to steal the cars.
To steal the cars, but then he comes back and sells them in Chicago. Got it.
In fact, on the night that he kills the FBI agent, Durkin goes about 45 miles outside of Chicago to Indiana, Valparaiso, Indiana, and he actually spends the night at a relative's farm out there.
Okay.
And again, the same day, Director Hoover of the FBI, he authorizes this largest manhunt in the history of the FBI to go find Durkin.
Yeah.
And Durkin has this dead or alive bounty on his head. And to say that this is an aggressive manhunt.
Yeah.
I mean, they are turning over every rock. Like I said before, they're arresting associates of Durkin, and they're holding him in jail saying, "Where is Durkin?"
Yeah.
There are some men in Chicago that closely resemble Durkin in appearance, and they've reached out to law enforcement, and they're saying, "Can you please give us any type of notification that we can carry around with us to show that we're not Martin Durkin," because they don't want to get shot by the police.
There was an individual when the FBI was looking for John Dillinger, roughly 10 years later. There was a guy, his first name was Ralph, I forget his last name, but he had a striking resemblance to Dillinger, and I think the poor guy was arrested 7 or 8 times. So he would have really appreciated having some kind of identification that says, "I'm not him."
Exactly. That's crazy. And again, this manhunt is in every major city in the United States.
Sure.
Because they have no idea where
exactly.
he is. A few weeks after the murder of the FBI agent, the Chicago police receive information that Durkin and his girlfriend, this Betty Andrews, they're going to be at a relative's house in Chicago on a certain day.
Okay.
So on October 28th, 1925, 3 Chicago police officers, they go to that relative's home and they get permission to wait inside the house for Durkin to arrive.
Right. Okay.
And so this is another stakeout to capture Durkin, right? Some officers sort of wait in the kitchen of the apartment.
Yeah.
Some are waiting in the back bedroom. The relative is in the living room where the front door is at. And they have this arrest or bust signal that is supposed to be, the relative is supposed to say, "Hi, Marty," when he walks in the door.
Okay, and that's the signal.
For them to come out of all the rooms with their guns blaring and arrest him. So when Betty Andrews and Martin Durkin walk in to the apartment, the relative says, "Hi, Betty." And again,
oh boy,
that's not the bust signal. So the officers holster their handguns, and they just sort of take their time walking into the living room. And when they do, they see Durkin, this fight ensues. One of the officers has a shotgun out now. He tries to shoot Durkin, but he accidentally kills the uncle who owned the apartment. Again, there's this scuffle. The shotgun goes off again, and one of the officers gets shot and killed through this friendly fire, sort of. But Durkin is shot. There is some reporting that he has a bulletproof vest on at the time, and that's how he's able to escape and not be hurt. But he escapes on foot. There's other reporting that does not mention anything about him wearing a bulletproof vest, but says that he is shot in the arm. But either way, he escapes on foot.
Okay.
And that night, again, they know he's in Chicago, and there is this citywide manhunt for Durkin. There's reports that every police officer had to come into work now.
Okay,
and start looking for him. We know that later that night, Durkin arrives at the office of a doctor who removes the bullet from his arm, and he kind of patches Durkin back up. Just hours later, the Chicago police swarm that doctor's office, only to find out that they just missed Durkin. And officers now are searching all the trains leaving Chicago, and apparently they miss him because he's on a train that is headed to New York. There's some reporting that he was actually pretending to read a book when Chicago police officers approached him. They didn't recognize him as Martin Durkin, and that's how he got away and went to New York. Once he's in New York, he stays at a relative's apartment there while he just, sort of heals from being shot.
Okay.
But back in Chicago, the very next day, there's 2 police officers, and they're plainclothes, and they are sent out to watch a residence that they have a tip that Durkin's going to be going to that house.
Yeah. Okay.
So these police, they're standing out front. It's at night, and while they're on their surveillance, they see a taxi cab pull up, and 3 guys get out of a taxi cab, and they enter a saloon on South Hall Street.
Okay.
These officers think that Durkin is probably one of these guys.
Yeah.
So these 2 officers walk over to the saloon. They approach these three men.
Yeah.
And they question them all, and they determine that neither of these guys are Durkin. Right.
Yeah.
But while these officers are still in the saloon, an armed robber enters from the back, and there's a shootout. And
completely unrelated to Durkin, though.
Completely unrelated to Durkin, but the 2 police officers are killed.
Mm-hmm.
And the robber gets away. And he's not identified. Of course, he's not apprehended because he gets away. But for several months after this robbery, there's always speculation that the robber was Durkin.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of typical, too, in those days.
Right. And so you can go back and see some newspaper articles back then that says he was the robber at that time.
Well, and that's one thing, too, you have to remember that when you go through these old files, you're looking at it really kind of as to how that case was evolving at the time. And so we have hindsight now, but at the time, when the case is ongoing, you don't have hindsight.
Right.
The best information you have is an informant told me that Durkin is going to show up at this bar, and lo and behold, somebody shows up about the time that it's supposed to happen, and then this thing gets robbed, and we know that he's, has a gun and will resort to violence. And so it's not that much of a stretch to assume that is him, and at least make him a suspect in it. So yeah, I don't. That's very
and again,
reasonable, actually.
Looking at it today, we now know that Durkin wasn't even in Chicago at this time.
Yes,
he's in New York.
Yes,
but again, we have that because again the hindsight that we have.
Exactly. Yes.
So, but again, I think when Director Hoover is briefed on these 2 plainclothes police officers being killed, again, this is just...
It intensifies everything. Because now we think Durkin now has killed 2 more officers.
Exactly.
Yeah. This guy is a menace. He's a real threat.
Right. And this is why Director Hoover created the FBI. And that we're nationwide.
That's right.
Because he can handle...
Now we can alert offices all over the country.
Right.
They're aware of this immediately, and they have the resources to, go out and search these leads and do it in a timely manner.
And again, Hoover sends agents to just about every car dealership in the United States to make them aware of what Durkin looks like, his description, and that he comes in, haggles over a price, and the next day the car is stolen.
His little scheme.
Right. And again, I said earlier that, he left that night.
Here's a little tip. Wait until you've made the sale to gas the car up.
Exactly.
Wait until the cash is in your hand.
Right. And I said a little earlier that Durkin left for New York on the train, and while he's in New York now, he steals another car, and he heads back to Chicago.
Okay.
Just outside of Chicago, he sees a road sign for a city that he remembers that he met a girl one time from that city. So, what do you think he does?
Well, he's going to go look up the old girl.
Yes. He drives to her house, and again, he hasn't seen her in 2 years.
Yeah.
Met her one time. He drives to her house, knocks on the door. She recognizes him and says, "Hey, you're wanted for murder." And he says, "You know what? I'm ready to start a new life with you." And the next morning, they get married.
I've just been waiting all these years to profess my true love to you, and it just took being the subject of a nationwide manhunt for me to realize that I wanted to marry you and just settle down and live a new life. And she bought that.
She buys that.
Okay.
And the next day they get married. But again,
that makes perfect sense. I mean, I can.
And they get married the next morning, and he uses a fictitious name for him on the marriage certificate.
Okay.
And they head to California, and they spend Christmas 1925 out there in California. They spend New Year's out there near Hollywood. But somewhere in early January of 1926, he sees some police officers outside a window, and they're kind of like loitering, kind of near where he is staying, and he assumes they're looking for him.
Yeah.
So he goes right back to his MO of stealing a car, and he goes to the dealer, goes in, steals a Cadillac.
Yep.
But this time the dealership notifies the police, who notifies the FBI and says, Durkin was here, just here in California, and he's got our Cadillac.
Yep.
From there, the FBI track him to Arizona. They track him through New Mexico and eventually into the great state of
Texas.
Correct. On January 17th, 1926, the sheriff in Pecos, Texas.
Okay, that's not far from like Judge Roy Bean territory.
Right. So the sheriff, he notices the Cadillac parked on a street, and he starts to question Durkin about the Cadillac. Durkin gives the sheriff a fictitious name and tells the sheriff that he is a Los Angeles police officer, or he's a deputy with the sheriff's department out in Los Angeles.
And the sheriff buys this.
Well, the sheriff asked to see paperwork regarding the Cadillac. The sheriff actually searches the car. He finds a pistol and a rifle inside the Cadillac. Yeah. But
hey, a law enforcement officer,
right? It goes along with the story that Durkin is smooth talking his way. So Durkin finally convinces the sheriff and says, "Hey, let me go to my hotel room. I'll get all my papers, my documentation. I'll get all the paperwork for the Cadillac."
Durkin must have been somewhat of a good BS artist because, again, talking this woman into that he hasn't seen in 2 years, that she knows he's wanted, he talks her into marrying him there, So and now he's talking a sheriff, to let him go. He probably had a pretty good line of bull.
Yeah, and we know that through his MO of stealing the cars. Yeah. That he sits there and haggles over the price. Sure. Eventually gets,
clearly he's believable enough to convince them.
Where they write the paperwork up and fill the gas up, waiting he's going to be there the next morning to get the car, and of course he steals it at night. So, he convinces that sheriff to say, "Hey, let me go to the hotel room. I'll get you everything you need, and I'll meet you back at your office, at the sheriff's office. I'll meet you there in a minute, and I'll show you everything." Stewart,
Mr. Sheriff should have said, "Well, I tell you what, let's take my car and we'll go down to your hotel room and I'll go with you. That way I'll save you a trip coming to my office."
Right. But that's not what happened here. So, Stewart, guess what happens next?
So he goes, the sheriff lets him go, and then he just leaves.
Right. Sheriff goes back to his office, and Durkin never shows up.
Yeah.
And the Cadillac is gone, Durkin's gone, but what the sheriff does do correctly at this moment is he alerts the FBI in El Paso. Okay. And he talks to an agent in El Paso who immediately recognizes the subject, the description of the subject and the Cadillac as it's Martin Durkin.
Right.
So, Stuart, guess what happens next?
So El Paso then notifies all the other FBI offices, and they begin looking for him, or in this little circle of wherever he could be.
Correct. Every law enforcement officer, probably in the state of Texas or anywhere near Pecos, they mount up and they head on all roads heading out of Pecos.
Right.
The news talks about these shotgun squads that are out there stopping every car, looking for Durkin. Everyone's out there looking for this Cadillac now. And 2 days later, they find it abandoned. It's actually had some damage done to the tire, so it's kind of abandoned on the road, and it's about 50 miles west of Fort Stockton, Texas.
Okay.
So again, the FBI get down there, they fan out, and they start interviewing, canvassing everywhere around there.
Yep.
And they interview a rancher who says, "Oh, I gave that couple that were driving the Cadillac, I gave them a ride to the town of Girvan, Texas.
Okay, I don't know Girvan.
Yeah, you can look it up today. It's still a small town out there. And the rancher says, hey, while I'm driving them to Girvan, Texas, I overhear them say that they're going to try to catch the train in Girvan to Alpine, Texas.
Okay.
So FBI makes it down to Alpine, Texas.
Right.
And they learn that the couple had purchased a train ticket that was on the train that was headed for San Antonio.
Makes sense.
So employees at the train station in Alpine, they identified Durkin's from a photograph.
Yeah.
And so now they know
we're closing in on him.
Right. That he's headed to San Antonio. The Alpine train employees also say, hey, Durkin also mentioned that he was inquiring about train connections out of San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah.
So now this investigation, again, heads to San Antonio, Texas. And the agent in charge of San Antonio, Texas is a guy by the name of Agent Jones.
Gus Jones?
Gus Jones.
Yep.
And the crazy thing about this guy is that not only is he an FBI agent, but he's a former Texas Ranger.
Yeah.
I mean, that's some street cred right there.
It really is.
Back in the day.
To just diverge just for a second, where this is relevant is we talked about Dillinger. So this Dillinger is going to be 10 years later. And the FBI were known as just college boys, and a lot of them were young on the hunt for Dillinger, and they got in several very, very serious shootouts. And Hoover realized, these are men that have never fired a gun before, or certainly not been in a gunfight. I need to get guys that have done it before. And so within the FBI, there was Gus Jones, there was Charles Winstead, a few others that were either former Texas Rangers or had been sheriffs and down in the southwestern part of the U.S. down there, and had actually been in real gunfights, and that they actually called them the Cowboys.
Okay.
Because they came in and actually it was one of the Cowboys that was the one that put the bullet in Dillinger. So Hoover probably remembered 10 years earlier, we had this guy down in San Antonio that had been a Ranger.
Right.
Yeah.
So the FBI in San Antonio, they determined that Durkin was there, but he has now boarded a train en route to St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
And the train was due to arrive on January 20th, 1926 at 11 a.m. in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Any guesses what the train was called?
The Texas Jet, the Texas Express.
Close. The Texas Special.
The Texas Special. Okay.
So Martin is on the Texas Special, headed on up to St. Louis. In fact, the FBI now finds out through the train employees that they know exactly what car Durkin is on, and they know what stateroom he is in. And the FBI decides that they're going to stop the train just outside of St. Louis. It's going to pass through a small town because they do not want the train to get to St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And this section of the railroad, it kind of cut through this flat field area of Missouri.
Okay.
And so on both sides of the train track, it's just flat farmland.
Yep.
And they know there is no place for Durkin to hide.
So even if somehow he gets away from the train, you got a whole flat area where there's no place to hide.
Right. He has no place. If he jumps, you're going to see him
running. That's not a bad plan.
Not a bad plan. Right. So at daybreak, the train is stopped in the middle of nowhere out on this plowed field, and it is surrounded by FBI agents and police officers. Mm-hmm. The FBI enter his stateroom, and before he has the opportunity to reach for a weapon, he's taken into custody. And now FBI transports him back to the Cook County Jail in Chicago. Again, because 1925, it's not a federal offense for the murder of the FBI agent.
That's right. Yep.
So he's going to be tried in state court
yep.
for the murder. Now, just a side note here, that a few years later...
Now, the feds would also have they'd have a charge on him for the stolen car across state lines.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And just a side note here, in 1934, the U.S. Congress is going to pass legislation to make it a federal crime to kill an FBI agent.
That's right. They made it in 34. They make it a crime to kill an FBI agent, but it still wasn't a federal crime to kill the president.
Yeah. We've talked about that before. Yeah. So now, while Durkin is in jail, in the Cook County jail, he's awaiting his trial. The jail personnel, they're confiscating his mail and they're reviewing it. Mm-hmm. And some of his personal letters to his new wife and letters to his former girlfriend, Betty Andrews, these letters are printed in the newspaper.
Okay.
And when Betty Andrews reads what Durkin is saying to the new wife, Andrews tells the prosecutor that she will testify against Durkin. So in June of 1926, his trial begins in Cook County, and in July of 1926, he is convicted for the murder of FBI agent Shanahan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he is sentenced to 25 years in prison. Now, about 8 months into his prison sentence, he receives notification that his new wife is divorcing him.
Shocker.
Right. Maybe about 2 years later, he's in prison, and he gets a visitor to his cell.
Okay.
And he guesses who his visitor was.
What year was this now?
This is about 2 years later.
2 years later, so 1927,
1928. Yeah, August of 1928, he gets a visitor in prison.
Cook County Jail.
Well, he's in the state penitentiary.
Okay, so he's in Joliet.
Right.
Okay. 1928. What was 1930? My best guess is going to be Al Capone, but I think that's wrong.
That's completely wrong. Stewart, that's an awful guess. The visitor is his old girlfriend, Betty Andrews.
Oh, okay. Oh, visitor. I'm thinking like I'm sorry. I was on the wavelength of a cellmate.
Oh, okay. I see. Oh, all right. I'll let you pass on that one then.
Sorry.
So Betty comes to visit, and she says, "Boy, I regret testifying against you." And she says, "I still love you, and I will wait for you."
Wow. This guy must have just been a Casanova. I mean, he's...
I don't get it. And he tells Betty, "Hey, the only reason I got married that next day or days afterwards...
just so I could get away."
No, he says, "I did it because I was told that at your uncle's apartment, when they had that stakeout for me and the officers were killed..."
He thought that she had...
Yes. Okay. He said, "I was told that you set me up."
Yeah.
And she says, "No, it was not a trap." But she's going to wait for him. Sadly, about 4 years later, she's going to pass away from an illness. At the time, there will be a newspaper article in the Chicago Tribune that will state that Betty was the sweetheart of the notorious Martin Durkin.
Okay, that's her obituary,
right? And it says, she risked her life to save his when the police set a trap for him.
Yeah.
But weeks later, while he's out on the run, he married somebody else.
Yeah, broke her heart.
Right. And the Tribune is going to further in their reporting say that she was the star witness in Durkin's murder trial against the FBI agent.
Yeah. Right.
And while you brought this up before, so while he is serving his state conviction, he's going to plead guilty to 5 federal counts of transporting stolen vehicles over state lines.
Yeah.
And he's sentenced to 15 years.
I wonder if that ran consecutively or concurrently.
Consecutive. Because after serving 19 years in state custody for the murder, he's released, but he's immediately taken into federal custody, and he begins serving a 15-year sentence.
That's bad time. Todd, one thing that strikes me, and maybe you saw this in some of the research, 25 years for killing an agent, and then also the 2 other. Well, no, I'm sorry, he was not involved in that. That's right. Going back, right? So it was just the agent. That doesn't seem like that severe of a sentence, especially considering how much work it took to get him and all that. We had discussed off air before we started about a potential that might have been some mitigating factors in Durkin's favor. Tell us about that. Well, talking about when Shanahan actually went to arrest him,
right?
How
exactly
how he approached him.
In part of the appeal that gets overturned.
Yeah.
But he does have an appeal. Durkin has an appeal, and he states, hey, look, I thought that Shanahan was robbing me while he was inside the garage. He said, I stepped out of my Packard. I had $2,000 cash in my pocket.
Yeah.
When a guy approached me with a gun, I thought it was a robbery.
Yeah.
Like
and
that.
I think what Durkin claimed that Shanahan used words of the effect of "I gotcha,"
right,
or something of that effect, rather than "Hey, police or FBI, put your hands up," and immediately identify himself.
Right.
Maybe if that's true, to me that does mitigate it somewhat.
Right.
He thinks he's being robbed, and this guy's grabbing him and showing a gun. That could be kind of work toward Durkin's favor, and maybe that might explain why the sentence maybe wasn't as harsh as maybe I think it probably should have been.
I did see some articles that said that when Betty Andrews did testify, she said while we were in California, he said that he would shoot police officers if they try to stop him.
Yeah, and also there was that previous case where no officers were killed, but he shot first and asked questions later.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And again, so...
And plus, he's such a BS artist. That was probably something he just cooked up thinking, well, that's in my favor.
Right.
This guy caught me off guard, and I'm acting in self-defense here.
Right.
Yeah.
So on July 28th, 1954, Durkin is 53 years old, and he's released.
Mm-hmm.
And not much from 1954 until 1981, he actually passes away.
Yeah.
Not much more about whatever.
Pretty much went on the straight and narrow, or
whatever
least,
happened.
Nothing notorious happened.
Right. And earlier in this episode, I mentioned those two plainclothes police officers that were killed in the saloon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, there were witnesses to that shootout, and after Durkin was taken into custody and he was in Cook County Jail, those witnesses actually went to the Cook County Jail.
Yeah, sure.
And they said, no, Durkin was not the robber.
Not him. So that is that. I assume then that the murder of those two officers is still unsolved.
Right.
Oh man, you know how I love unsolved cases. So I might have to delve into that one.
There you go. And so again, we've talked about before that you were an agent in the FBI Chicago field office.
Yes.
And supposedly Agent Shanahan's duty weapon is displayed up in there.
Yeah,
on a wall in there.
I want to say it is. I think I have a dim memory of that. But another thing that's going to be on display in the Chicago office, as I recall, it's been over 20. Let's see, almost 25 years since I was more than 25 years since I was in the Chicago office.
A young agent up there.
But I want to say there was a display about some of the stuff that had happened in Chicago, and my emphasis then, much like it is now, was on gangsters and Al Capone and Dillinger and that stuff. So I would have the Shanahan gun wouldn't have probably been much on my radar, compared to seeing that other stuff
or reading the files of that other stuff.
Yes,
that were up there.
Yeah.
So again, as always, thank you so much for listening, and as a listener, hit that subscribe and follow button.
Thank you so much. We love doing this for you guys.
If you've enjoyed this case and you enjoyed hearing it, share it with your friends, and join us next time on Back in Crime when we explore another investigation.
See you later. This has been the Back in Crime podcast presented by Texas crime travelers Todd Hiles and Stewart Fillmore. We are the executive producers. Grace Hiles is the producer and director. Theme music composed by Eddie Bandus. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and our YouTube channel at Texas Crime Traveler.